Hello, everyone. Looks like we have people just joining. We're right at the top of the hour, so I'll maybe just give it 20 or 30 seconds for those that are coming in right on time. I'm excited for everybody to be here. Happy Mental Health Awareness Month. For those of you that were here last time, I'm wondering who set up a gratitude jar in their house. Maybe who went and read 1,000 awesome things and laughed about it. If you did read anything off 1,000 awesome things or put something in your gratitude journal, put it in the chat. I would love to read it after. And then if you weren't here this week, I'm excited for everybody to be here this week. It looks like people are still rapidly joining. We'll just get started with a little introduction, and I want to be sensitive to everybody's time. So again, my name is Catherine Van Tassel. I'm the Director of Behavioral Health over at GBS. And this month for Mental Health Awareness, we decided to do a mini mental health series for 4 weeks. And essentially, the idea is that these will just be like little bite-sized pieces of a takeaway that you can do each week. So last week we talked about gratitude, how gratitude actually changes our brain. And this week we're going to talk about setting boundaries, which can be a very uncomfortable task for a lot of us. So I'm excited to talk about that. There's going to be an email sent out because it sounds like there may be a glitch in the Zoom link because we're doing this repeatedly, that it may not be adding to people's calendar or not being able to access it that way. So our fantastic wellness team, one of our consultants is going to send out an email with some directions to problem solve that if anybody has encountered that. But if not, let's get started. Okay, so if any of you have ever heard me talk before, or also from the wellness team, this idea of like a very holistic approach to mind and body. And this, what could be called a wellness wheel, over on the right-hand side. When we think about mental health, and when you look at the World Health Organization description of mental health or previous Surgeon Generals, basically it's not just the absent of having a mental health diagnosis. It's essentially being well in terms of how you cope with stress, how you feel purpose in this world, having community and connection. So I really like this infographic because we can see that self-care is so important. We're talking about mental health, but the side effect is also physical health in terms of prevention and intervention. And we can use this on a continuum with conventional and complementary approaches. So when I was working inpatient in the hospital and somebody came in to see me, being hospitalized is obviously a very acute condition. It's somebody's worst day, and working in psychiatry, that usually meant somebody's not safe to be at home, and they can feel very hopeless and helpless, and we can feel that way without needing a hospitalization. And sometimes there's this idea of, well, there's really nothing we can do, or we don't have any treatments, or that treatment has failed for me in the past. We can become very overwhelmed. But the idea about this is there are so many things that we can be doing. So how we're stressing, how we're moving our bodies, how we're eating. Do we feel purpose and community and connection? What is our environment around us? Physically, emotionally, these relationships. So today when we're talking about boundaries, when I look at this wheel, I really think of physical environment and our relationships and our communication. So that's what we are going to focus on today in terms of the wellness wheel. And just if anyone's curious, if we were thinking about gratitude last week, this would really be mind. So this mind-body connection, but more in like techniques to help in terms of positive psychology. Sorry. Okay, so boundaries. If we were in person together, I would ask for people to raise their hand and say, who's had to set boundaries, who doesn't set boundaries because they are the peacekeeper in their relationships, or who it makes it very uncomfortable for somebody to say no. And many of us, or some of us, may have heard the statement before that you can't say no, and unless you can't say yes until you can say no. And I see people raising their hand that it's uncomfortable to set boundaries. However, when we don't set boundaries, essentially we just end up potentially being taken advantage. And this can be with relationships, but this can also be with tangential objects we'll talk about later as well. But essentially, is this boundary that we set with other people when we're thinking about relationships, when we say, hey, this is okay, or this is not okay, or I don't feel like doing that, and that is okay. There needs to be no judgment. But the idea is that when we set boundaries, instead of feeling bad or guilty, or I'm not showing up for this person in one way or another, thinking of this as self-care, just like not feeling bad when you feed yourself healthy, nutritious meals, or when you take time to exercise, or you meditate. Not putting boundaries in a different category. Setting a boundary is a way to care for yourself, especially your mental health. So, okay, we can kind of have an idea of what types of boundaries are out there, but I think that there's far more than we may consider. So, physical boundaries, absolutely. We know what that looks like. Our emotional boundaries, so this can be from work, this can be from personal relationships, this can be neighbors, this could be religious community. So sometimes in a religious community, there can be, can you help out this member? Can you help out that member? Can you take on this role? And while we would love to do all of those things, individuals also have responsibilities for work and family, and sometimes that can feel overwhelming. But thinking about if I'm in a community where this is part of my wellness wheel, is being part of these people to say no, also in a place that people do good, that can be very uncomfortable. And then, of course, in our family. And then thinking about time boundaries that we set. And this can be with multiple things. This can be with work. This is time boundaries with ourselves and with others. And I think what's new that we haven't seen in the past decade really is this idea that we have to be very purposeful with our digital boundaries. So think about our cell phones. Most of us, I would say probably 99% of us, go to bed with a cell phone sitting right next to our bed. It may be the last thing we look at when we go to bed, and the first thing we look at in the morning. But these devices stream so much information at us at all hours, days, all times of the day. And also it's a way for people to send us notifications. I mean, there's no boundary when this device is with us all the time. And there's such a high availability to our mind and to our time. So it's a good time to consider your relationship with, and not just with a cell phone. Think about TVs, streaming services, computers. What is that doing to our time, and what is that doing to our mind? Okay, so why do we even want to consider setting boundaries? Well, one, we're talking about mental health, how not managing boundaries can be a significant cause of stress. We may say yes to a request, and I'm sure most of us have done this, and then you just think the whole time, why did I say yes? Why did I say yes? I don't have enough time for this. Ugh, I don't even like this. I don't even want to go there. I don't want to do this. And then you just have all of this stress leading up to it. And so again, this idea of this is a self-care tool. Thinking of this as self-care. Our identity, communicating effectively with other people. Also, this is good for our relationships when we set boundaries. We can be resentful if we say yes, 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 and we don't mean that, and then can become passive aggressive in a relationship, and just establishing limits for ourselves. So, what would be some signs that would say, I probably should start setting some boundaries? Well, are you feeling overwhelmed? Do you feel like you don't have enough time for yourself? Do you feel like you don't have enough time to do the things that you enjoy that are good for your mental health? I talked about feelings of resentment, feeling physically exhausted. I am just so tired. I cannot do one more thing. And then again, this lack of time for yourself. And I kind of started with this like challenges, feeling really guilty. Um, Also, we are now in a culture that is this always on or hustle, this hustle culture, almost like, if I go and get 4 hours of sleep because I've got a job and I'm doing all these things and I'm the perfect parent and I'm the perfect church member, I'm the perfect friend, I'm the perfect sister, I can be here for everybody. And then that's this badge of honor, just being exhausted by it all. And this is really something to reconsider, this idea that we always have to be moving, going, doing something. It's okay to disconnect and have some moment to breathe, have some moments to breathe and quiet our mind. And then feeling like others will be mad at us, reject us. Maybe we won't be able to be in that social circle or that community. But again, this idea of when we set boundaries, that does improve our relationships with other people and most certainly ourselves. So, again, the idea during this mini mental health series is that we're going to have little tasks that you can do throughout the week. And I'm going to give you a little worksheet that you can do. But when we're talking about just starting to think about this, okay, so you're going to consider, where may I need to set some boundaries? Is that with digital? Is that with people? Is that with work? And there may be one or two, but the idea is to start small. So if you're thinking, oh yes, all of these things fit, I need 10 different boundaries in 10 different places, don't start there because that will be too overwhelming. So just think of one. My invitation to you this week is just one boundary. And then when you're thinking about this boundary and every step that you take, reminding yourself this is self-care. And maybe you need some support in doing this. Maybe this has been a challenge that you've had for a really long time, and setting a boundary with one person is going to be really difficult. Would that mean, do you have a therapist, working with a therapist on that? Or do you have an EAP at your work to reach out with a therapist to just maybe have one or two sessions to say, hey, I attended this seminar and some of the things resonated with me, and I just wanted to work on this one area in my life. Of course, you want to be kind, but also firm, right? So not this constant apologizing for the boundary in the self-care. We tend to do that a lot. And then how did that go? When you do this practice, observe that, notice that. How did you feel? Again, you may feel very uncomfortable, but what was the outcome? Did you have more time for yourself? Did you feel less stressed and overwhelmed? So this idea of just always evaluating the things that we're doing, and maybe we need to reassess and do it differently, or that really worked. The idea, start small. This is something that you're doing for yourself, no guilt. So being kind to yourself and to others, and seek support if you need to. So you can choose any boundary that you want to set, but I just want to give an invitation to everybody to consider digital boundaries, just because of the research that we're seeing on the impact of this. Now, I want to be really clear that I don't think we should go back to not having phones at all. I love my phone. I don't get lost because of my phone, but we just need to be more mindful of our use of our phones. So I just want to have you consider your technology. So think about, are you watching a couple of hours of TV, and is that impacting your sleep or impacting you interacting in your community, or being on the phone? Like, as a family system, is everybody on the phone at dinner? Or now we're not even sitting down at the table because everybody is on some sort of screen or a digital device in different areas. How may taking some time and setting some boundaries around devices bring you together within your family system, your community? And also, what about your mental health? Having all this information streaming and can make us feel self-conscious, low self-esteem, inadequate, imposter syndrome. And we know that that's not true. It's just the perception of it. But it's hard when we just get it constantly. And it is the thing we see first thing in the morning. It's the first thing before we do anything else. So look at this, how you might feel. Make tech-free zones. So remember I talked about a gratitude journal, or a gratitude jar, having people put pieces of paper in the family in that jar. What if you had some sort of jar, bucket, whatever that is, and when it's dinner time, all devices go into that. Or when people come home and you get to meet up and talk about the day, whatever that is for you, devices go on it. Everybody goes on a family walk, devices don't come. Having these tech-free zones. App management. The number one thing I could recommend is just at least turning off all notifications. Our brains have a very hard time switching from one task to another. So no matter what you're doing at home, work, school, if you get these constant alerts, whatever you're doing gets interrupted, you go to that alert, and then to come back, it's hard to concentrate again on that. So that would definitely be one of my, this would be the first thing to do, is at least do that. And then schedule time where you just don't have a digital device near you. Schedule time to go outside, read a book, talk with a friend. You'll get multiple benefits. Just having short connective time with somebody you love releases oxytocin. It helps decrease anxiety and depression. Some of the opposite things that we see when we're constantly on a device. And just for facts, we're spending almost 7 years of our life on social media if you look at consumption in a lifetime. So this isn't small. And here you can see this little phone. Look at how cute. It has its own bed. So if I have one assignment this week, aside from looking at your boundaries, is to find a different room in your house that's not your bedroom that your phone gets to sleep in tonight and tomorrow night and the next night. And if somebody, the first thing that patients always tell me, it's what I use for my alarm clock. Amazon has digital clocks that we all used forever for $10. And that will be worth your peace of mind. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to say is we are out of time, is when you're thinking about setting boundaries and thinking about different areas, here's an invitation to maybe write this down in a journal and to look at where you can use improvements in each area. So mental, emotional, time, digital, and work-life boundaries. And think, are some too porous or rigid, or are you having healthy boundaries in those areas? So think about your relationship, how much flexibility you need there, and where you can improve. Well, that is it for this week. I cannot wait for you guys to come next week. I just want to look at the comments because I know that people have put in what maybe they did last week. Oh, we have lots of people saying stuff about putting their phones in drawers. That is great. Oh, I love this. You guys are doing so great. Well, thank you so much for coming. This looks like boundaries really hit a nerve with a lot of people. This seems to be an area that either we're working on or want to work more on. As a side note, for those of you that are still here, when I was doing a little bit of research for this, I noticed that there are a lot of podcasts just on boundary setting. So clearly there's something to be said about that. Thanks everyone, and happy Mental Health Awareness Month.